My name is Jessica. I was 27 when my dad leaned across the conference table and said, "Let your brother take it from here." I had spent 3 months building that pitch. Late nights in the marketing suite, redrafting slides until the colors matched the client's palette exactly. I'd rehearsed the transitions so tightly that my fingers moved on muscle memory. I knew every statistic, every quote, every angle of brand psychology. And yet, there we were. 12 minutes into the biggest presentation of my career, my chance to lead our family's firm into the next tier, and my father waved his hand like I was a glitch in the program. "Jessica, take a seat," he said, not unkindly. "Let Evan run this one." I didn't move. The room was a sea of suited faces. The client from Chicago leaned forward, puzzled. The junior partners looked at each other. My younger brother, Evan, cleared his throat. "I'm happy to jump in if Jess is okay with that," he said. He sounded innocent, helpful, the way Evan always sounded when he was about to take something that wasn't his. I still didn't move. Dad's voice hardened slightly. "Now," I clicked the remote to the next slide anyway. The client blinked. Evan took a step forward. "Actually, that part leads perfectly into what I was going to say about the regional rollout." He pressed the next button before I could. The screen changed, so did the tone of the room. Suddenly, it was his show. He spoke confidently, using phrases I'd written, quoting metrics I'd researched. The team nodded. Dad smiled, relaxed, leaned back in his chair like this had always been the plan. I stood there for 22 seconds, then walked back to my seat without a word. My heels hit the carpet too hard. My pulse echoed in my ears. Someone handed me a coffee I didn't remember asking for. I stared at it like it might apologize. Evan finished the pitch. He was good, not better, just good enough to pass. The clients clapped politely. Questions were asked. Agreements were made. I answered none of them. Afterward, in the hallway outside the boardroom, I caught up to my father. "Was there a reason?" I asked, careful not to raise my voice. "Did I miss something?" He adjusted his cufflinks. "It wasn't personal, Evan just reads the room better." "The room I built?" He sighed. "You're very detail-oriented. Sometimes that reads as rigid. Or prepared." He gave me that look, the one where his lips pressed into a patient line, like he was handling someone too fragile to see themselves clearly. "Let's not make this emotional." I didn't reply, because I'd learned early when they say not to be emotional, what they mean is don't react to being erased. Back in my office, I shut the door and stared at the wall. The framed degree, the vision board, the notes from interns thanking me for mentorship, things Evan never had, things he'd never need because he had a name and a father's nod. And now he had my project. I opened my drawer, pulled out the original deck. Slide by slide, I marked the changes they'd made, and on the last page, I wrote one word in red ink: watched, because that's what they forgot. I was still in the room. The hallway to conference room B smelled like dust and citrus polish. That's where all the executive debriefs happened. Glass-walled, sound-dampened, always booked under vague terms like client evaluation or strategy sync. I'd never needed an invitation before, until Tuesday. I saw my name on the weekly calendar, off-site strategy planning. But my team was here, Evan was here, and that room was full. I stopped at the corner near the frosted partition, listening, chairs scraping, someone laughing. Then my father's voice. "She's not quite there yet. Good instincts, but too caught up in the details. Evan balances it." A pause, murmurs of agreement. "She doesn't need to be cut out," another voice said, maybe Linda from finance. "Just buffered. It's a perception thing." "She's already noticed," Evan said. "She just won't say it out loud." They all laughed again. I didn't move. I stood still for nearly 4 minutes, staring at the door that had once been open for me by default. Now I needed to knock. I turned away before anyone saw me. In the elevator, I counted the lights as we descended. Each floor felt like a judgment. Marketing, analytics, HR, all places I'd shaped and guided, now floors I passed like a visitor. When I got to the cafe across the street, I ordered the strongest black coffee they had. The barista, a kid with green hair and a piercing that looked painful, glanced up and said, "Rough morning?" "Still ongoing," I said. I sat by the window, watched the revolving doors across the street spin. A few interns exited, laughing. One waved toward the second floor, my floor. I opened my laptop, not to work, just to keep my hands moving. But I couldn't shake the feeling, like something inside the company had rotated a few degrees, just enough to unseat me. Later that day, Evan texted, "You okay? You seemed off in the morning." I stared at it, typed, "Just tired." Deleted it, typed, "You did well in the pitch." Deleted that too. Finally wrote, "Thanks, no period." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. That night, I went back into the office after hours. Badge still worked, for now. I printed the updated pitch file from the shared server. Side by side, I laid it next to my original. They hadn't just shifted slides, they'd removed context. The data that framed the need for our strategy, the part that justified our entire approach, was gone. In its place, broad confidence language, generic assurances. I found the metadata. Original author, Jessica Monroe. Revised by Evan Monroe, approved by Richard Monroe, my father. I leaned back in my chair, let the silence settle. The city lights blinked outside, but the floor was dark. Except for my desk, still lit, still mine, for now. I opened a new folder on my desktop, labeled it Retention, and saved both files inside. The lunch reservation was supposed to be at 12:30. 12 seats at Vintner's Table, the rooftop bistro 2 blocks from our building. A place reserved for closers, legacy deals, and promotion whispers over lamb risotto. I helped book it until my calendar alert disappeared. At 12:05, I walked toward the elevator anyway, heels echoing over marble, phone in hand like I was checking updates. Just in case anyone questioned me, no one did. The hostess greeted me with a professional smile. "Name?" "Jessica Monroe." Her eyes skimmed the iPad. Pause. She frowned slightly. "I don't see a Monroe on this list." I tilted my head. "Try Richard or Evan." She brightened. "Yes, party of 12, already seated on the terrace." Her tone didn't shift. She wasn't aware of what that meant, but I did. I took a breath. "Can you show me the way up?" She hesitated. "Are you joining the table?" "Eventually." I followed her through the wine hall, past waiters in charcoal aprons and women laughing over white linen. At the far end, through glass doors, I saw them, Dad at the head, Evan beside him, Linda Harold from Contracts, the new VP from Denver. They were halfway through a bottle of something expensive. Bread broken, sides passed, 12 chairs, all filled. The hostess stopped before the door. "Would you like me to check?" "No," I said, voice even. "Thank you." I turned, walked back toward the restrooms, paused at the corner. From where I stood, the terrace's wall cut off half the view, but sound carried. I recognized Evan's voice. "A smoother transition if we avoid overlap." Linda. "Agreed, we just need to handle it delicately." Dad. "I'll speak with her. Frame it as delegation." Pause, glass clinked, laughter followed. Someone added, "She's smart, but she's too immersed. It's exhausting." No one disagreed. The next voice chilled me. Harold, "It's just, she doesn't read as a leader." I backed away, past the concierge, past the door. Down the elevator, where a group of interns held their coffees and whispered about new branding tags. I stepped out early, onto the mezzanine floor, where few people ever stopped. The hallway was cold. I leaned against the glass wall and looked down at the city. Below, people moved with purpose. Everything automated. Mechanical. Except for me. Except for the part of me that still refused to shut down. Back at the office, I sat in the far end of the terrace. Alone this time. No champagne. Just my notes. I scrolled through the internal messaging app, checked the group thread where meetings were usually confirmed. A new name had been added. Evan Monroe, Executive Strategy Lead. No announcement, no team-wide message, just an update. Quiet, surgical. I locked my phone, reached for the notepad, wrote 4 names, drew lines between them, then wrote underlined at the center, transition. If they wanted clean and careful, they chose the wrong daughter. The call was scheduled for 9:00 a.m., cross-departmental, strategy sync, internal only, all the right names in the invite, all the right time zones accounted for. Except mine. I was copied in accidentally. The title had changed from Strategy Recap to Selective Review. I noticed it the night before, buried in a forwarded chain. No one had removed my access, just didn't acknowledge I was included. I joined early, camera off, name muted. They trickled in, Linda, Evan, Raj from West Coast, Dad. There was small talk at first. Someone joked about overnight flights. Another complained about the new client dashboard. Then the tone shifted. "We need to push final decisions to next month," Evan said. "Why?" asked Raj. "Optics," my father cut in. "It gives her time to self-select." "Does she suspect anything?" Linda again. "Too early," Evan said. She's methodical, but she won't escalate without a reason. I nearly laughed. I clicked into the shared folder they referenced, scanned the agenda. My name, absent, my division, labeled in assessment. I watched in silence as they redefined me. They moved timelines, delegated clients, assigned trials of software I'd researched to teams I hadn't approved. Every one of my benchmarks reattributed. She doesn't track performance the way the board expects, Dad added. She's responsive, not visionary. The call moved on. No one questioned that. No one pushed back. After 27 minutes, I clicked leave meeting. Not because I couldn't bear to listen, because I'd heard enough. Downstairs, the lobby hummed with corporate rhythm, heels, laughter, the endless dings of security badges. I moved through it like an echo. At the cafe, the same green-haired barista raised an eyebrow. Triple shot today? 2, I said. I need clarity, not adrenaline. He handed it over. Rough week? I smiled. Not rough. Revealing. Back at my desk, I opened my personal notebook. No cloud, no sync, just ink. On a blank page, I wrote one phrase. They want silence, give them sequence. Underneath it, I outlined every shift. Calendar exclusion, slide removal, lunch reallocation, metadata override, call exclusion, each with a date, each with a witness. I added one more. Self-select out, then underlined it twice, because they weren't firing me. They wanted me to walk, quietly, gratefully. Erase myself to prove them right, but I wasn't built that way. The restaurant was called Citrine. Private booths, velvet drapes, a wine list longer than the menu. I wasn't invited, but I was seated. A friend in reception owed me a favor. No name, no ID, just a nod and a table near the frosted divider that separated VIP from very unseen. They thought I was on vacation. I was in observation. From my spot, I heard glasses clink, laughter rise. I recognized every voice. Evan pitching confidently, Linda's laugh, too high, and my father, ever the diplomat, guiding the flow like a seasoned conductor. What caught me wasn't what they said. It was the absence of a single word. Mine. No mention of Jessica, no reference to my team, no trace of the work I'd spent years building. Even my division had a new title now. It hit me more than I expected, not because they forgot me, because they erased me so cleanly it looked like policy. I left before dessert. Didn't speak to anyone, didn't even finish the drink I hadn't ordered. Back at the office, the halls were dark. Janitorial staff had clocked out. The glow from the printers was the only light. I keyed in, slid past security, went straight to the admin console. Linda always used the same passphrase for project storage, her dog's name plus the current quarter. It took me 2 tries. Inside, I found a file labeled Transition Timeline Q3 Review. I opened it. My name wasn't in it, not once. But my clients were, my products, my systems, and something new, leadership reassignment objectives. Under that, a set of tasks marked as in motion. One caught my breath. Role redundancy messaging. A subnote, emotional narrative is high risk, avoid confrontation, promote empowerment. They weren't just transitioning me, they were reframing me into someone else's closure. I printed it, one clean, unmarked copy, slipped it into my personal folder, tucked inside a plain manila envelope. As I turned to leave, the printer jammed, a sheet half-spooled, edges curled. The last line of the page hung crooked in the output tray. Begins social narrative soft launch post-July. I stared at it. Soft launch. Like I was a product, a rollout, a phase in someone else's PR. Back at my desk, I turned on the lamp, pulled out the timeline I'd built months ago, the one for the product Evan now led, and beside it, I began to build something new. Not a resignation, not a protest, a reckoning. Slide by slide, fact by fact, I wouldn't argue, I'd reveal. The retreat was booked at Verelian Park Lodge, a converted estate just outside the city, marble arches, panoramic halls, and a reputation for visionary alignment. The invite list was tight. I wasn't on it, which made my arrival louder than any announcement. No one saw me enter the conference room. I waited until the team had settled into the vision reset session, the one labeled Executive Realignment, Legacy and Forward Flow. They were deep into a slide deck when I walked in, 12 heads turned. Evan blinked mid-sentence. Linda's stylus froze on her tablet. Dad didn't speak, not yet. Jessica, Harold finally managed. This isn't booked for transparency. I finished for him. I didn't sit. Instead, I stepped forward, held out a clean folder, and placed it at the center of the long oak table. No slides, no deck, just documentation. Dad's voice returned, neutral, cautious. We're in the middle of something. So am I. He gave the room a look. Let's take a short break. No need, I said. You're about to cover points I've already mapped. I'd rather you do it with the full picture. I opened the folder. Inside, 2 sheets. One, the printed timeline I'd intercepted. The other, my annotated counterfile. No color, no spin, just contrast, facts placed side by side, replacements, rewordings, reductions. I saw the flicker in Raj's eyes, the pause in Linda's breath. You went through private files, Dad said finally. I went through shared deception. Jessica, Evan said, voice softened. This isn't personal. Stop using that word like it's a shield, I cut in. What you're dismantling is a structure I built. What you're rewriting is a name you didn't create. Silence. Then Dad leaned back. We weren't trying to erase you. Then why am I a footnote in your rollout plan? Evan looked down, said nothing. Linda finally spoke. You're intense, Jess. You take everything seriously. I take people seriously, I said. Their labor, their silence, their memory. The windows behind us framed a perfect lawn, trees trimmed like thoughts curated. Inside, no one moved. I stepped back. This isn't a request, it's a record. I left the folder there and walked out. My heels echoed softer than they had coming in. But they didn't shake, not anymore. The lobby at Verelion was colder than the conference hall. I waited there, not for approval, but to be seen leaving. No one followed immediately. A few minutes passed. Then Evan stepped into the light, still in his navy blazer, eyes darting like he was searching for an exit before he'd entered. Jess? Don't, I said, turning. I didn't want it to go this way. You mean directly? He flinched. You made it personal. I looked past him. The elevators lit gold. The front desk attendant whispered something to a bellhop. Real life moved on. You are my brother, I said. So yes, it was personal the second you signed your name under mine. He didn't argue, only asked, what are you planning now? I didn't answer, because in that moment I realized something. They still didn't think I had one. Not a plan, just a reaction. Back in the city, I skipped the office and walked to the park 2 blocks north. There, between rows of concrete benches and overgrown hedges, I took out my notepad. 2 pages, left, their timeline. Right, what I knew they hadn't filed. I listed names, not the ones who erased me, the ones who worked with me, who remembered. Then, at the bottom, I drew a box and wrote, Memory metadata. Metadata. The next day, I accessed the office archive. Not digitally, physically, past HR, down the back corridor near facilities, into the old server storage room where hard copies were boxed and dated by fiscal year. I pulled the 2019-2022 binders. Inside, project launch notes, signature logs, review records, handwritten client feedback. In 2 different entries, I found my initials, not digital. Ink, witnessed, stamped, things metadata couldn't override. They'd rewritten the surface. But they hadn't erased the paper trail. At the bottom of one folder, behind a misfiled client contract, was something unexpected. A photo. Company gala, 2020, Dad in tux, Evan beside him, me, centered, not posed, mid-laugh. Holding a plaque I don't remember receiving. I flipped it over, in faded marker. For Jessica, she built what no one saw coming. It wasn't sentimental, it was evidence of who I was before they started narrating over me. That night, I laid everything out on my apartment floor. Binders, prints, photos, not to rehash, to reconstruct. And this time, I wouldn't present it to them. I'd present it around them. There was only one person I could call who'd remember the foundation before the branding. Layla Tran, operations lead at Vassal & Gray, our third-party logistics partner. Sharp, discreet, allergic to performative loyalty. We hadn't spoken in 8 months. I didn't ask for a meeting, I booked one. 10:30, Tuesday. Neutral ground, Marlowe and Finch's satellite office downtown. Under the radar. All-glass conference room on the 9th floor. Layla walked in wearing a black blazer and no makeup, her signature move. Jessica Monroe, she said, not smiling. You only call when it's surgical. Today's no exception. I laid the folder on the table, not the one from the board retreat. This was thinner, more targeted. Need a timestamp check, I said. Partnership approval flow from Q2 2021. Do you remember who proposed the central switch to our supply hub? Layla didn't even blink. You, in a midnight call. You had the numbers, and your father said, let her run it in front of half our team. Then why does the new version list it under Evan? Layla opened the file, brows arched slightly. That's not a version, she said. That's an overwrite. She closed it, then reached into her own folder. Pulled a printed email thread. Yes, printed. 2 weeks ago, someone from your internal audit team asked us to purge our local backups for alignment. Legacy archive rationalization. Sound familiar? I stared at the wording. It was clean, legal, neutral, weaponized. They thought you'd comply? We have protocols and memories. Her eyes locked onto mine. You gave us our margin jump that quarter, Jess. I don't forget margin. I exhaled, not relief, recognition. There were still people who saw. I need more than memory now, I said. I need confirmation. You'll get it, she said. But Jess, are you going to make this internal? I looked out the window. Below us, taxis moved like cells through veins of the city. No, I said. I'm going external. She nodded once, then handed me a flash drive. No cloud, she said, just legacy. I left the office and crossed the street to the corner cafe. Ordered nothing, just sat in the corner and plugged the drive into my laptop. Inside, original strategy brief with my name and metadata. Cross-signed approvals with partner seals. A recorded clip from a post-launch meeting. In it, my father's voice clear as ever. Jessica's framework gave us this edge. The rest is just optics. I leaned back in the chair, eyes closed. The past hadn't disappeared, it had just been shelved. Now I was unshelving it. The quarterly summit was held at the Marquette Grand. Ballroom C tiered seating, 17 key clients. 2 investment scouts. I wasn't listed on the program, but I was seated 4th row center, name badge printed and waiting. Thank you, Layla. The agenda ran like a metronome. Trends, metrics, the Legacy to Velocity campaign, which had my fingerprints erased but format intact. Then came the panel, Dad at center, Evan beside him, moderator to the right. Someone flown in from New York, sharp jawline, even sharper questions. The topic, strategic transition and vision-led change. The answer, controlled language, team alignment, positive friction. Until someone asked, can you speak to the original framework that enabled your distribution advantage in 2021? Dad paused. Evan smiled. It was collaborative, he said, and that was it. No names, no details, just smooth surface. I stood, didn't raise my hand, didn't ask for permission. Actually, I said, voice carrying clean across the room, I can speak to it. The moderator blinked. I'm sorry, who? My name is Jessica Monroe. I built the original distribution framework, the one your panel just forgot to mention. Every head turned. Evan shifted in his chair. Dad stared. Flat, unreadable. The moderator recovered. You're welcome to clarify, briefly. I'll be exact, I said. I walked to the side podium, pulled a small drive from my jacket. Original documents, time-stamped. Partner validated. I clicked once. The screen behind them flickered. A single slide appeared. Not branding, not color, just black text. Truth isn't disruptive, silence is. And under that, the original rollout map, my version, partner stamps intact, dated, signed. The room went still, then a voice from the back. That's the format we received in early 2021. I remember this layout. Another client. Was this from you directly? Yes, I said, before it was redistributed under another name. I looked at my father, then at Evan. This isn't an attack, it's an addition, a restoration of fact. The moderator nodded slowly. We appreciate historical clarity. I stepped down, didn't wait for applause, didn't need it, because I wasn't there to be liked. I was there to be remembered, accurately. After the panel, 2 clients approached. One handed me a card. Let us know if you ever consult independently. The other just said, I never liked Evan's voice. Yours, I trust. As I exited the ballroom, I heard someone say behind me, she didn't blink. They were right, I didn't. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 8:07 a.m. early. Intentional. Security scanned my badge, but the elevator stopped at floor 16 instead of 17. Executive. The light blinked red. I tried again. Access denied. At reception, the assistant smiled awkwardly. There's a technical restriction update. I can call someone for you. Don't bother, I said, turning. The message was clear: no verbal confrontation, no HR memo, just spatial erasure. They'd removed me from the floor plan, not the org chart, the building. I stepped into the stairwell, climbed up one level, locked glass. Beyond it, my office, my desk, my plant still alive on the windowsill. Inside, I saw Evan walk past, laughing, coffee in hand. My badge might have been revoked, but I hadn't revoked my memory or my contacts. I descended to the garage, pulled into my car, sat, and made one call. No voicemail, no small talk, just 5 words. I need a board override. Pause, then, understood, when? Today. I hung up. The contact's name, not relevant yet, but their reach, absolute. By noon, I received a callback, brief. Be at Madison and Clyde, 3rd floor, glass lobby. That was all. I arrived 10 minutes early, minimalist design. No logos. Inside, one man waited. Tailored, direct, hands clasped like he'd already read the ending. You're looking for position, not permission, he said. We respect that. I slid the flash drive across. Originals, recordings, partnerships, timeline of obstruction. He nodded and opened a second drawer. Inside, one slim black folder, a slate gray key card, a single phrase printed on the folder's edge. Neutrality is obsolete. I opened it. Inside, procedural language I'd only seen once before, at the founding of my father's company. It wasn't about removal. It was about redirection, an alternate motion, one that bypassed executive leadership entirely, activated only by partner majority in cases of strategic misrepresentation. I didn't speak, didn't need to. The man looked up. You'll have 5 days, use them precisely. I left with the card. In the elevator, I saw my own reflection. Not combative, not vindicated. Clear, measured. The kind of stillness that only comes when the noise around you is no longer yours to filter. Outside, traffic hummed past, but I wasn't watching cars. I was watching sequence. And next, the sequence would be mine to define. The room was dark wood and glass, neutral, precise. Inside, only 3 people, myself, the proxy counsel, and the compliance witness. I signed 2 forms. Neither had titles at the top, only references. One line at the bottom read, Initiator Jessica Monroe, co-signatories to follow. Once this is submitted, the counsel said, you cannot walk it back. I don't want to. Do you want a public version? Only if they try to deny. He nodded. Then we proceed. The motion was filed at 11:14 a.m. At 2:06 p.m., I received the meeting slot. Wednesday, 7 p.m., charter review, private quorum, no observers. By then, they'd already felt the shift, because 2 board members who hadn't answered my calls before, they both called me that afternoon. Same question in different tones. What exactly are you doing? I didn't answer directly, only asked if they remembered the fiscal swing of Q2 2021. Silence. Then one said, you're really doing this, aren't you? I already did. At 6:55 p.m., I walked into the private hall at Andridge Club. Not opulent, formal, oak-paneled walls, fireplace cold, 11 chairs set, 10 filled. My father sat third from the right, Evan next to him. Both had identical expressions, not shock, not anger, calculus. That was fine. I wasn't here for reaction. I was here for record. The chair opened the floor. This is a confidential forum. Ms. Monroe has initiated the override under Clause 17B. All counterclaims must be documented, not verbal. Dad rose. Before we begin, he said, I want to acknowledge the effort my daughters made. He looked at me. But effort doesn't equal ownership. I didn't blink. Then ownership doesn't excuse erasure. No one clapped. No one needed to. Because this wasn't theater. This was vote-triggering clarity. The chair asked me to present. I didn't show slides. I submitted packets. 7 folders, each with copies of partner endorsements, audit trails, date-matched approvals, client statements, public risk projections if internal governance failed. One by one, the packets were reviewed. Quiet, meticulous. Then came the final document, a strategic reshuffle draft, already vetted, already co-signed by 4 board members. Only 2 more votes needed. Evan shifted in his seat. His voice cracked slightly. Jess, this is sabotage. No, I said. This is stewardship of what I built, of what you silenced. Dad looked at me, not with rage, with something worse. Recognition. That I was no longer reacting to what he took. I was reclaiming what I never surrendered. The chair closed the meeting. Final vote in 48 hours. No contact between parties. Neutral counsel will confirm. We stood. No one spoke. Outside, I walked alone to the parking valet. But I wasn't alone in this anymore. Now they followed my outline. Whether they liked it or not, vote night, same room, same table. Only now, eyes met mine differently. With calculation, sure, but also with caution. The chair opened the proceedings. Motion initiated by Ms. Monroe, reviewed under Clause 17B, vote requires minimum 6 affirmative signatures for board activation. One by one, hands raised. 1, 2, 3, pause, 4, 5, then 6. Final, 8 out of 10. Motion passed. I didn't flinch, didn't smile, I only breathed. Because beneath the structure, beneath the file stacks, beneath the rehearsed expressions, I had won something deeper. Memory as record. Not anecdote, not whisper. Fact. The chair nodded. Effective end of this quarter, operational leadership will undergo phase transition. I stood, met every eye without apology, then left, not rushed, not triumphant, exactly as planned. Outside, the street was colder than expected. A wind moved through the avenue like someone was sweeping hours away. I crossed into the restaurant across from the hall. Not fancy, just silent. Dim booths and waiters who didn't interrupt. Ordered water, that was all. Until I heard a voice. From the entrance, female, slow, familiar. Jessica? I turned, and there she was, my mother, not part of any boardroom, not copied on any brief, just there, as if absence were a prelude to ambush. She approached the table, didn't sit, just placed a folded napkin beside my glass. Inside, a note, handwritten, one line. Not everyone forgot you, I was told to. I looked up. She was watching me like a stranger might watch a storm from a glass train. I don't want your apology, I said quietly. She nodded. I don't have one. Then why come? Because your father's silence isn't the only version. You never asked for mine. No, I said. I didn't. Silence. Then he made it sound like you didn't want me at all. I blinked. What? The hospital, the therapy, the decisions, he always spoke as if you... She stopped. Hands shook once. Not visibly, but I saw it. You were told a version, I said, and you chose to believe it. I didn't choose. You did. Sharp, flat, not cruel, just clean. She didn't reply, just said, I came because they say you've taken control. They're right. Then I hope you remember what that control cost. I rose, folded the napkin again, put it in my coat. I remember exactly what it cost. She left, no hug, no breakdown, just exit, and that somehow felt more final than the boardroom vote. The video was scheduled for release at 10 o'clock a.m., not leaked. Released, through channels I controlled, on platforms they couldn't edit. Title simple, just, correction, no animation, no music, just one voice, mine. In it, I sat in front of a white background, unedited. You've heard a version, I said. This is the other. I named no one, only told the timeline, the strategy I wrote, the decisions attributed to others, the meetings I was removed from but had notes for, the photo of my office door after my badge stopped working, the voice recording of a partner stating it was my framework. Then I paused and added, I don't need credit, but I won't allow distortion, not because of ego, because of precedent, because silence isn't neutral. It's permission. The video ended after 7 minutes and 42 seconds. It had no call to action, no hashtags, just facts. I turned off my phone, left it face down on the conference table. Layla was waiting outside. You sure you're ready? I'm not here to be ready. I'm here to be accurate. She smiled, not kindly, sharply. Then let's finish it. We entered the main hall, not a press event, a partner symposium. Originally headlined by Evan, now restructured. I stood at the lectern. No papers, no prompter, only my own words. And in that moment, I realized something simple and devastating. They'd spent so long trying to erase my presence, they never prepared for my return. I opened with numbers, hard, direct. Q2 2021's rise traced back to the proposal that bore my name. Then the projections that followed, without me. Then the margin dip after my removal. And finally, a chart showing what silence had cost the company. I said nothing sentimental, only, erasure isn't invisible. It leaves shape, weight, shadow. In the front row, I saw 2 old clients nod, and someone else. A woman I hadn't expected? My aunt. She'd flown in uninvited. The only one on that side of the family who once told me, "Don't let your talent get parented out of you." After the speech, she approached, didn't hug me, didn't whisper praise, just pressed a small envelope into my hand and said, "Open it later, not now." I nodded, left through the side door, no camera followed. But the echo of the room did, and I carried it with me into the dusk. I opened the envelope alone. In my office, after the building had cleared. Inside, one folded document. No letterhead, no introduction, just a photocopy of a medical authorization form. Signed 18 months ago. Patient, Jessica Monroe. Decision maker, Evan Monroe. Consent granted. Family member may act in absence of primary guardian. Under it, a note from my aunt. He signed when you couldn't speak, and she watched. I tried to stop them. I failed. I'm sorry. For a moment, the walls leaned, not inward, just enough to make silence loud. This wasn't about business, not really. This was about why I'd always felt dispossessed, not just from the company, from my own crisis. I remembered the hospital, the oxygen mask, the beeping, the white lights, the way my mother's eyes had darted away when I tried to ask, "Did you come?" She hadn't answered then. Now I knew why. Because the answer wasn't absence. It was complicity. They didn't just fail to protect me, they appointed someone to manage my recovery, without me. Evan, who'd smiled in every quarterly meeting like none of this happened. I stood, walked to the archives, not corporate, personal, my box. One labeled in sharp black, JM, internal inside. Therapist's letters, the journal I kept during outpatient recovery. One recording I hadn't played in 3 years, I played it. Voice shaky, mine, younger, softer. I feel like I'm waking up to a version of my life that's missing furniture. Like someone rearranged everything while I was asleep, and now I'm the guest in my own house. I stopped the audio, breathed, then spoke into the air. No more guests, no more locked rooms. At that moment, Layla knocked. Press requests are climbing. Legal just asked if you want a statement. No, I said, no statement. Then what should I tell them? I looked down at the photocopy, then at the audio recorder, and finally at the door. Tell them I'm in the building. Tell them this time I'm staying. I didn't need to punish anyone. That wasn't the point. The point was this: I was never erased, just interrupted. An interruption doesn't end a life. It recalibrates it. And now they could either acknowledge me or get out of my way. The rooftop was still. Late afternoon wind curled around the edges of the glass awning like it was trying to whisper something back to me. Below, the city pulsed without pause, lives unfolding, choices colliding, none of them asking for permission. I stood there with no script, no assistant, no camera, just one object in my hand. My first notebook, the one with the coffee stain and the spiral slightly bent from years of being stuffed into 2 small bags. Inside, I'd once scribbled a single line during my worst recovery session. I am not erased. I'm misfiled. It had felt true then, not anymore. Now I wasn't misfiled. I was in the right chapter, and I was writing it in pen. Far below, a curated crowd filed into the new gallery for the Invisible Architects opening, an event I'd quietly bankrolled, curated behind the scenes, and deliberately removed my name from. No press release had mentioned me, no branding hinted at my fingerprints. Because it wasn't about recognition, it was about record. Downstairs, on the far wall, a solid sheet of glass carried the names of 29 women whose strategic impact had been white-labeled or absorbed. No bios, no photos, just initials, and at the bottom corner, in soft copper plating, silence also leaves shape. It was my phrase, no attribution, no one needed to know, they would feel it. When I stepped down from the rooftop, the building lobby had emptied out. One janitor hummed quietly while vacuuming. The front desk light blinked in steady rhythm, unbothered by legacy. I moved past the cafe, the one where Evan once announced our reorg like it was a wedding toast. Then past the glass case where they had replaced my portrait with a newer face. Smiling, polished, rehearsed, I didn't flinch. Because it no longer felt like erasure, it felt like substitution. And substitutions don't remove the original, they just sit in its light. The gallery was cool and dim, neutral, intentionally quiet. No interactive screens, just glass, metal, and light. I stepped inside, took it in slowly, each name etched with surgical precision. I traced my fingers over 3 of them. Women I knew, one I'd mentored, one I'd almost replaced, one who disappeared mid-project and was never mentioned again. They had always existed. Now they were seen, even if anonymously. I reached the copper plaque last, placed my hand flat over the phrase. Silence also leaves shape, and left it there. Not in mourning, not in rage, in anchoring. I felt the warmth of my skin absorb into the metal, the room, the moment. Not a mark, a memory. And then I turned, left the gallery, and stepped outside where the light was shifting, pale gold turning into soft gray. There were no reporters waiting, no emails from my parents, no calls from Evan. The world kept moving, which was the point. When I reached the corner crosswalk, I stopped, not because the light was red, because I wanted to feel stillness once more. I looked at the building one last time, the gallery, the office tower, the window 3 floors up that had once held my team, my plans, my name on the door. Now it was just glass again, but it didn't ache. It just reflected. I opened the notebook again, wrote one final sentence beneath the old one. I am not misfiled, I am unsilenced. Then I crossed the street. No one noticed, but the shape I left behind did.